What would you do if the man who promised you forever walked onto your ship with another woman on his arm, smiling, like the ocean could hide him? Would you pull the fire alarm on his perfect little lie, or would you let the sea do the talking? I had 3 seconds under a ballroom spotlight to decide, and I chose dignity over drama. My name is Diana Blake, and this is the voyage that taught me who I am when the tide turns against me. I didn't grow up on yachts or in uniforms pressed by somebody else. I grew up in a harbor house that smelled like salt and lemon polish, with a father who could coil a rope in one hand and a laugh that cut through fog. He used to tell me ships listen to the captain, kiddo, and if you want the sea to answer, you say what you mean and mean what you say. Back then I thought he was talking about boats. Turns out he was teaching me how to steer a life. I married a man who believed the sky looked better when it reflected off glass. Anthony was magnetic in that hungry way ambitious people are. He moved from borrowed desks to a tower in Manhattan faster than most folks move apartments. I ironed his shirts, counted pennies, and said, "You won't fail because I believed it." Because in those days his eyes still searched for mine when storms pressed on the windows. Success came on cat feet, then on loud shoes, then on a private elevator. And little by little, a hollow sound started tapping inside him. He didn't call it guilt. He called it boredom. While he chased deals, I studied maps. I didn't do it for applause. Honestly, there was none. I'd tuck bills into envelopes, lay out meds for his mother, switch the laundry, and then sit with a cup of cheap coffee and learn bearings, currents, radar, rescue. I learned how to guide steel through water that pretends to be simple until it isn't. I failed a few exams, I passed more, and one day a leather folder slid from a drawer, and I traced the embossed letters with a finger that wouldn't stop shaking. Maritime license. Captain. I didn't run to the kitchen and shout. I closed the folder and set it down. Not hidden exactly, just waiting its turn. You know how betrayal actually arrives, not like thunder, more like a vibration. I was folding warm laundry when my professor texted, "Proud of you, Captain Blake." I smiled at the kettle, at the quiet house, at the gulls out the window. Then the air changed. Not colder, not hotter, just holding its breath. I can't explain it, and if you've never felt it, maybe this sounds dramatic, but marriage teaches you the sound of absence. Before I read a single post or saw a single photo, I knew he booked a 10-day Caribbean cruise. Not with me. With her. Selena. I didn't go snooping. I didn't need to. People who require attention like oxygen leave a vapor trail anyone can see. Perfect lighting, red dress, champagne held like a trophy, captions that sounded like a dare. Yeah, that happened. Do you think I should have blown it all up right there? Screenshots, bored emails, the whole scorched earth package. Or would you have done what I did, which is breathe, zip up a crisp white uniform and go to work? Boarding day felt like music and sunscreen. Families hugged kids, pulled rolling luggage like they'd been invited into a secret club. A brass band made even the seagulls a little cocky. The ship rose white and certain, a city with a keel, and I could feel her alert under my shoes. I had boarded early, walked the corridors that would be my bloodstream for the next 10 days, checked drills, signed logs, looked my crew in the eye. They looked back with that respectful curiosity a new captain earns, and I gave them calm and clarity. The sea hates drama. It respects control. He didn't see me at the pier. He saw his fear. It showed in the way he carried her bags like they were heaviest at the edges, in the way he flinched at ordinary laughter, like it might be aimed at him. Selena glowed for her phone. Anthony put on sunglasses like a costume. From a shaded vantage point high above, I watched them cross onto my ship, and something tight inside me clicked into place and went still. Patience, I told myself. The sea delivers. Let me say this so you don't mistake me for a saint. I didn't plan a spectacle. I didn't daydream about humiliating him. I wanted something quieter and sharper. I wanted the truth to stand up honest and plain, and I wanted to see what kind of man he chose to be when there was nowhere left to hide. Do you think that's fair? Life on deck played like a glossy commercial. Pools flashing turquoise waiters gliding with trays, bass thumping through planks, wind lifting the ends of hair and trouble alike. She moved through it like the ship had been built to frame her selfies. He moved through it like the floor might crack. Crew did what good crew do. They nodded, they served, and they noticed. Not gossip. Patterns. Where they sat. How he tipped. The way her eyes sharpened when compliments arrived later than she'd ordered them. They sent me quiet updates because a ship becomes a whisper network when it trusts its captain. I didn't analyze every note. You can press facts so hard you lose the shape of truth. At night, the ballroom bloomed. Chandeliers spilled light, a quartet made people feel richer than they were, and the red of her dress caught halogen like it had been paid for by a sponsor. Anthony's smile slipped off his face and back on again, too big, too tight. Up on a shadowed balcony, I stood still, hands on the rail, uniform starched like armor, and I remembered a different night, cheaper windstorm beyond thin windows, his laugh soft in my ear, we made it. Die, we always do. People do change. Slowly then, all at once, like a cliff finally giving up its fight and becoming sand. In my cabin, our wedding photo sat beside a handwritten promise. Forever, no matter what comes, it's us. I traced the letters, closed the journal, and stared at the ceiling until the ship's hum counted me calm. The opposite of love isn't hate. It's the quiet where the questions stop. On the third morning, a steward knocked with the kind of face people wear when they're about to deliver news they wish they didn't carry. He repeated a poolside conversation, not dramatic, just exact. "When are you leaving Diana?" she'd asked him. Sugar with a blade in it. I dismissed the steward with thanks, closed the door, and let the engine's low music hold my pieces together. I didn't cry. I didn't smash a glass. I rolled out a chart and moved our pencil line by a whisper. That's leadership. A small decision that shifts the destination. He heard about me before he saw me. That's how ships work. Reputation moves a deck ahead. I watched him overhear two stewards near the bar talking about the new captain, who corrected a nav error without raising her voice. He smirked like it didn't matter, but curiosity is a current. It pulled him toward the thing he was pretending he didn't care about. I practiced my gala remarks in the mirror. Safety, dignity, trust. Words that sound like corporate wallpaper until you've stood on a bridge at 2 a.m. and made a call that kept 1,000 families together. You know what I mean? The crew checked mics, curtains settled, and a stagehand whispered 5 minutes like a prayer. I thought of my father's hands, rope-burned sure. I thought of the first time I plotted a course that didn't just aim at a port, it aimed at who I wanted to be. Then the announcer smiled the way men smile when they're about to invite power into the room, and the applause started before my name left his tongue. Pattern interrupt. People always ask if I stared him down. No. I stepped into the light and looked past him. Not around, not through past, to the passengers who had placed their lives in my hands, to my officers standing a little taller in the shadows, to the wall of glass that framed a sea that doesn't clap for anyone and still demands respect. I said good evening and the mic warmed to my voice and I dropped anchors in that room. Safety, dignity, trust. The words didn't sparkle, but the crew's heads lifted like they mattered, because they did. He froze. That's not an insult. It's what happened. He didn't leap to his feet or drag Selena out or try to make a scene. He just stopped like his nervous system pulled the plug. Selena's whisper at his ear was sharp enough to slice ribbon. That's your wife. The diamond at her throat did what diamonds do. It reflected everything without blinking. I didn't give them a glance. One look and the story would have tipped from leadership to spectacle, and I refused to surrender that wheel. I bowed, left the stage, let my hand tremble once in the wings, then put the tremor away. In a lemon-bright corridor, he tried to catch me later with a soft Diana that belonged to another life. I lifted a hand, small palm open, not to shame him, just to draw a border. Not here. Not like this. You cannot control a person who learned to control herself. He drifted nightside to the rail with his tie loosened, and the moon minding its own business. I took the bridge, watched radar sweep like a heartbeat, and answered the ocean with measured hands. And then the twist arrived. A tropical depression spun itself up ahead. Not a monster, not with the distance we had, but enough to turn choices into consequences. We could hold the published course and let the outer bands slap us. Messy rain, dramatic photos, a few nervous first-timers, maybe a viral video from a stairwell. Or we could make an early quiet correction that would slide us into calm water and deliver everyone to sunrise like it had been promised. I'd marked a safer thread earlier because that's my job. To see the paths most people won't notice until it's too late. I called my officers, we walked the math, and I gave the order. Maintain heading 163. Bring the engines to 78%. Prepare for a 4-degree starboard correction in 5 minutes. Here's the accident that felt like destiny. As we rerouted some comms for the bridge, a test tone bled into the ballroom, where the afterglow lingered, so my voice, not dressed for applause anymore, went soft and steady through an open channel. No poetry, just competence. And that was the blow. Not the reveal that I was captain. The collision between his fantasy of control and the real thing. In that moment, he understood the most powerful person in his world wasn't buying diamonds. She was keeping 3,000 souls safe at 20 knots. Stick around, because what happened next will blow your mind. He went back to their suite, and for once he couldn't sleep. She could, or she pretended to. When she woke, she launched. Shoes, words, accusation volume turned up to drown out the feeling that she'd been outclassed by something she didn't even know how to describe. You tricked me, you made me look like a fool, why didn't you tell me? And he tried to answer, but shame eats language first. She packed. Not to leave the ship, just to leave the story. That's a thing people do when the mirror shows more truth than they ordered. He asked for a formal meeting on the bridge. That matters. The formality. He didn't corner me. He booked time like any passenger who understands there are boundaries around command. I granted it with an officer present. Protocol isn't pettiness. It's what keeps feelings out of the gearworks. He arrived with his hair a little wrong, and his watch looking louder than it ever had, and he stood at the threshold where my world begins and asked if he could cross. I said yes. He didn't apologize like a man dodging discomfort. He apologized like a man who finally found the courage to be small. He said he was sorry for the cheating, for the lying by omission, for treating our marriage like a box. He could set down anywhere and pick up later, no harm done. He said he was sorry for thinking I was a harbor he could leave and return to on his schedule. He said he was scared of quiet lives because his own head made too much noise. He said a lot of things, and I believed maybe half, and that half mattered. I told him the truth I owed him without giving away the respect I owed myself. Anthony, I believe you're sorry. And sorry isn't a bridge anyone else is required to cross. He nodded, looked at the helm like it was a living thing, and surprised me. What does that heading mean? So I told him. I showed him the arrows and numbers, how wind pushes, how current lies, how a degree now is a mile later, how responsibility isn't a feeling, it's a practice. Not to flex, not to educate a child, to honor the dignity in knowing how a thing works. I didn't forgive him. Not in the movie way with a swell and a kiss and a return to normal that never existed. I honored the effort and protected the boundary. He left without trying to touch me. Relief and grief sat down in the same chair in my chest and agreed to share it. We skirted the weather like you step around a shouting stranger on a sidewalk. Eyes forward pace even. Passengers danced, drank, told each other versions of the story that belonged to them but not to me. Selena found a new orbit people who wanted to stand near the heat, even if it burned their eyebrows. When we docked, she descended the gangway in victory colors and a face that had learned nothing. He followed not behind her, not beside her, just near like proximity might apologize for everything proximity had ruined. He glanced up at the bridge. He didn't wave. Neither did I. Here's where some of you will disagree with me. I didn't expose him. I didn't send photos to his board, or call a blogger, or stage some heroic exit. Some people think that makes me weak. Some think it makes me noble. I think it makes me a captain who picked her battles. Ships listen to the captain. My job was to get every soul aboard from one horizon to the next, without drama, people could dine out on for years. So I chose quiet justice, the kind where a man walks ashore different than he boarded and nobody claps. A month later, a letter arrived, actual paper, his handwriting steadier than I remembered. He'd started therapy, told his board the truth, before anyone else could sell it, moved out. Left me the house and the harbor and the option to vanish him from my life. He didn't ask for forgiveness. He didn't wrap himself in the flag of redemption. He wrote one line I keep near my license. Thank you for being the kind of captain who didn't need to sink me to save yourself. So was I satisfied. In a way that doesn't photograph wellness. In a way that will always ache a little also, yes. Leadership isn't just steering steel. It's wrestling with questions applause can't answer. What do we owe each other when we fail? When men in power fail women quietly, when women in power are punished for not putting on a show, when privacy rubs against public safety, when truth could trend but doesn't have to. Where do you land? I chose dignity, and dignity charges interest. It's paid in the opinions of people who wanted fireworks, in the silence of people who mistake calm for surrender, in the long work of being consistent when nobody is watching. The ocean didn't lie to me. It never does. It answered wind and gravity and the pull of a moon that couldn't care less about our little dramas, and it carried my ship like it always has, on the condition that I carry my end of the deal. I learned that trip that the loudest justice isn't always the kind you can screenshot. Sometimes it's the kind where you keep your voice level, your hands steady, your eyes forward, and the person who wronged you has to hear their own heart in the quiet you created. If it were you, would you have blown it up, dragged the story into daylight, and let the crowd do what crowds do, or would you have done what I did? Set a course, hold a heading, let the truth arrive at its own speed. Do you think I let him off too easy? Or do you think I kept my hands clean in a world that loves mess? Tell me honestly, if this hit you anywhere real, stick around, because the next story will test your compass even harder. Tap subscribe so you don't miss it. Share this with someone who needs to hear that. Calm power isn't weak, it's earned, and drop your take in the comments. Your agreements, your anger, your own experience of being betrayed, or being the one who had to choose dignity over spectacle. If it were you, what would you have done and why? I'll be in there reading because I still believe in conversations that make us better sailors, even on dry land.